Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are and whatever time you see this video. Today we have a special guest with us, Mr. Mark Reed, and he's running for the Congress from 30th Congressional District in California. He is an actor, and he's a small businessman, and he's a rancher. So, welcome to the show, Mr. Mark Reed. How are you today?
I'm doing extremely well. Thank you for inviting me onto the show. It's a great opportunity to speak to the people.
Sure, not a problem. So, can you help us out in understanding a little more about yourself? I mean, how you started your career and how you got into the politics. And we've been hearing that you've been into the politics for a little more than 8 or 9 years now. So, we would like to hear more from you about your career and then the politics.
Well, my mind goes all the way back as a child. My first encounter, I grew up in a military family. My father was a lieutenant commander in the United States Navy, so I learned about the Constitution. I didn't really learn about party politics. I learned more about America and taking pride in America as a country. And so my first experience is watching John F. Kennedy when he was assassinated, and it drew me in. So I watched politics my entire life, and going to Richard Nixon, I saw his administration. I wrote a letter to Richard Nixon and asked him if he would come to my birthday party, my 12th birthday party. And I told him what I was observing about his administration with Henry Kissinger and the China and everything else. And he was so impressed that an 11-year-old at the time was following an administration as closely and as detailed as I was, that he sent me a handwritten letter back and saying that he was impressed with me following politics as close as I was at such a young age, but unfortunately he couldn't come to my birthday party. But I've always had an extreme intrigue for the political arena, national politics, policies, and then later on in life, I got married at 21. I met my wife at 11 years old. I gave her a promise ring at 16 years old. We married at 21. I have 3 adult children and 11 grandchildren now. And so now that I reached about 55, I decided I wanted to jump into the political arena. I was the national rep for American Indians for 15 years, dealing with government-to-government issues. I've testified in front of the FCC on 4 different occasions about vertical integration and consolidation of the media, of the complete uniformity of thought, which is the gateway to tyranny. And so these testimonies went well, but that was almost 20 years ago. And so after that, watching the direction of our country in 2010, I decided to run against the Progressive Democrat that occupies the congressional district that I'm running in, and realized that the common person's voice was not being heard. We were hearing a narrative being pushed down on us by both parties, by the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. And our representatives were no longer representing the individual in the district. So I decided to step up to the plate and say, you know what, I want to carry the common person's voice to Washington, D.C. Be that voice of reason, be that voice of common sense, and represent the district as a whole. Not a party, not a political party, but represent the district. So that kind of sums it up in a nutshell there.
So very nice, very impressive. I mean, started your career indirectly from when you were being very young, when you were childhood, which is very impressive. Can we, before we go to the actual topics, I mean, can you talk about your acting career? I mean, I mean, you're also an actor.
Well, absolutely. I, grew up also in a family on my mom's side. They were cinematographers. So I was on the set as a child with Elvis Presley. My grandfather and my uncle did several of his films. So I was always intrigued. But being kind of an extrovert, I like the other side of the camera. I like being a performer versus being on the camera side of it. So I became a performer. I've done a lot of live shows on theater. I've done some modeling work when I was younger, and then I decided to go in front of the camera and become an actor. So I've done a lot of TV shows. I've done some, film work. I was on the Hidalgo. I was on, I can't even think about it. To me, I've always looked at it as kind of more of a paycheck. When you're working in the film industry, it's how much am I going to get? What am I going to do? Is a check and a clear. And so, yeah, I've done some episodes of 2.5 Men. I was the co-star on a film called The Reawakening. I was on another one. Did a co-starring role in a film called Purgatory. You know, it's a lot of different things that I have done, and I enjoy it. It's a collaborative work because it's a group of people coming together. The actor is not the main focus. The main focus is the entire crew, from the person who has written the script all the way to the financiers, you know, the backers of it, to the production team, to the editors, to, you know, it is a collaboration of a multitude of people that put a product together. The worst thing for an actor to do, just like a politician, the worst thing for an actor or a politician to do is to think that they are it. They are the one. They're not. The face of the politician or the face of the actor is representing a group of people that are coming together to make something happen, in a very positive way and a positive piece of work. So the political arena is very similar to acting. I'm not there. I'm not the one. I'm representing 720,000 different people of different political backgrounds, different traditions, different ethnicities, different ideas and concepts. What is the best way that I can represent them in Washington, D.C.? The incumbent right now represents his party only. He hasn't even been in the district since November. For the last 8 months, he hasn't even been in the district. He in his career of 23 years, he has authored himself 163 bills, which 3 of them passed. 2 of them were renaming a post office. 1 was an amendment to a immigration bill, and that was it. So his success rate of him authoring bills is 1%. You look at the bills that he's co-sponsored, meaning he jumps on the train to take credit for. He has jumped on 3,986 bills, and only 260 of those bills have passed, which gives him a success rate of about 7%. So he's got a 93% failure rate there as well. So he can't even identify a good bill to co-sign or co-sponsor to get passed into law. This is why our district is suffering a multitude of issues, from homelessness, drug addiction, lawlessness in the streets, now the defunding, now the rioting with Antifa and so forth. The people in the district work hard, whether they're Republican or Democrat. They work 40, 50 hours a week to pay their mortgage, to pay their bills, to put their children through school. The least they can expect is security and the security of their quality of life. And this representative is failing on all of those.
So, thanks for a brief note on your career in the acting, and you've been talking to you met many of the celebrities in the industry, and also you mentioned about the few points. The current Congressman Brad Sherman is how he's performing in the Congress right now. Yes, I've been talking to many people, and we touched most of the points. Let it be homelessness or COVID or Second Amendment and all these things, but we did not touch much about the drugs. And you're the one, who's talking more on the drugs on your campaign page. So can you talk about what exactly you're advocating? In the name of the drugs in your area. Can you talk a little more about that one, please?
Absolutely. Drug addiction and mental health go hand in hand. Drug addiction is the self-medicating of an individual who has not been given the services or the understanding through psychiatric care as a child. You know, you're growing up and you go through emotional growth patterns to be able to deal with life. So we are failing to identify children in high school and even in grade school. We're failing to identify them. They may have some severe problems going on at home, with a divorce, might be substance abuse in their own home. There might be physical abuse going on. Our first responders, in essence, is our teachers and our guidance counselors in schools. If they can't identify these little markers, a child shows up at school, they're doing great, they're dressed great, they're getting great grades. All of a sudden they start failing. They're starting to show up at school disheveled. There's something going on. We should be able to have a system in place to where you sit down with the child, you ask them what's going on, you talk to them, you can bring the family in, and you do it in a very private setting, so that way there's no embarrassment with all their peers, and to be able to identify and help them through these crises. Instead, we're not doing that. We're building these gigantic schools where there's up to 5,000 children there. They don't have the qualified staff in the school to deal with it. So now what we're dealing with after decades of failing in the schools and identifying early on problems, we're dealing with the severity of drug addiction and mental health walking around the streets. It's not that society doesn't want to help. We've passed several laws giving our county officials, our state officials, our city officials, and even the feds a tremendous billions of dollars to deal with it. And all they've done is squandered it. They give it to their, campaign, contributors through the 501c3s and the builders of high density housing and transitional housing, but yet they still haven't addressed it. If you look in New York, where they had the Housing First initiative, the homeless crisis went up, drug addiction went up. Then you had Gavin Newsom when he was the mayor of San Francisco. The same thing. He spent billions of dollars in San Francisco for homelessness and drug addiction. It went up. Los Angeles is doing the same thing. It's going up. The state of California is trying to do the same initiatives. Housing First. They have to understand that this is a mental health, physical health, spiritual health problem, and they have to address all the issues in order to fix it. But one of the major things in addressing it is not just addressing the problem on the streets, but addressing the root cause of the problem. That goes right down to the foundation of the child, of being able to understand what's happening and give the child and the family the help that they need early on before it takes root and destroys the entire person.
So what are you proposing, to help improve the situation of the kids in the school or children in the school to overcome the drug addiction or, avoiding the drugs? So what is that you're proposing to help the situation in the...
That's a great question. Going back to 1986 when Ronald Reagan removed the funding for mental health and short-term and long-term mental health care facilities because of the corruption that was going on then. We need to bring back in a cooperative effort with the federal government, state government, city and counties to create short-term and long-term mental health care. This is what we need to do. It has to be a cooperative movement because in the state of California, they have a little bit of mental health, but it is up to, I believe it's approximately 250,000 plus per patient, and it's not doing it. One of the things that's happening now from 86 to about 2000, the psychiatric community was doing psychiatric care through prescription. They're coming to the understanding and conclusion you can't do that. You have to find the baseline of the emotion of the person. You have to get them to grow and improve and be able to get the tools that they need to deal with life on an emotional level. So, psychiatry by prescription doesn't work. You have to deal with the person. This takes funding. This takes the dedication of psychiatrists is already there. The problem is they're overloaded. They have up to 5,000 patients per year that they have to deal with. So the psychiatry by prescription is the only way they can deal with it because they can't see these people. They give them, they diagnose them. You've got bipolar, you got schizophrenia, you have this. Here, take this bottle of pills, go home, and I'll see you in a month. This has got to stop. We have to look at the person, the whole person, and deal with that whole person as a whole.
Thank you very much for your views, and hopefully things will improve and the reforms will come and to help the students to overcome these issues. And you right now, when we are talking about healthcare right now, so why don't we cover this COVID-19, which is kind of gripping whole world, and it's also impacting the economy too. So what do you think of the federal level or the state level, how they're handling the COVID-19 and how they're trying to improve the lives of the people here?
Well, I think that you have to go to the origin of COVID-19 in Wuhan, China. And that is when it first appeared, and they're coming with the statistics now that probably showed up in Wuhan, China, back in October, not just November or December. They just released, the World Health Organization just released that China never reported the COVID-19 to the World Health Organization, but yet the World Health Organization completely lied about what China was doing. China made a complete, how would you say, conscious decision to cover it up. In December in Wuhan, it was the Chinese New Year. You had over 5 million people that started understanding that there was a disease going around. They left Wuhan. China refused to allow any travel from Wuhan to Beijing and Shanghai, but they let everybody else leave because they went to Italy, they went throughout. So they spread the disease. China very actively started buying up all the PPE in January. They spent billions of dollars. So they knew exactly what was happening. And then the cohort, the chairman of the World Health Organization was covering up for China. And it's a corrupt situation. My opponent actually supported what was going on and condemned President Trump, supported the chairman of the World Health Organization, supported China in what they were doing in their cover-up. So once President Trump knew exactly and got a good idea that this was going to be a serious problem pandemic, he shut down the travel from Wuhan into America, except for American citizens. They allowed them to come back. They were quarantined. They were checked. But he was criticized. He was called a racist. He was called he was called all kinds of things by Nancy Pelosi, including my opponent. And that was probably one of his best moves right off the bat. And that was on January 30th. Then from there, he had to try to understand. He organized a team of the greatest scientists, with Dr. Fauci, the other scientists that were behind Dr. Fauci. And they really dealt with it on a very serious level, shutting down the economy like they shut it down, trying to understand it. The issue is that all pandemics, even in the past, the last 3 that have come from China, you have to have somewhat of a controlled herd immunity, meaning that 60% of the people are going to have to get it, build the antibodies up to it in order to create the vaccine, in order to create treatment for it, and so forth. So I have no, how would you say, criticism for the way in which the federal government has dealt with it. I do have criticism, though, for the way in which state government has handled it, because our federal, Department of Health and Disease, CDC, has given recommendations for the states to follow. But because a lot of the governors, the Democrat governors, have such a hatred for this administration, such a hatred for President Trump, they threw it off to the side. Even Joe Biden had a major rally in February. You had Nancy Pelosi in California going to the Chinese markets in San Francisco saying, come on out. There's no problem. It's not a big deal. You have the mayor and the governor of New York saying the same things. You have the governor of New Orleans saying, come on down to Mardi Gras. They sat there and kicked it to the curb, which increased the spread of the virus. Then now, that was then, and now they're blaming President Trump. And it's like, wait a minute, look at the timeline, look at everything that he's done. I don't think you could expect the federal government to move any faster than it did, because it worked at breakneck speed like no other time in history.
Thank you very much for expressing your views on this. I don't want to get into the politics. I mean, I know it's between the Democrats and Republicans right now, so we'll leave it to the audience.
Everything is political.
I know, yes. I mean, so we'll leave it to the constituents and the audience to decide. I mean, what is right for them and what is wrong for them, what works for them. So we'll leave it there. So this COVID-19 has exposed a few things. I mean, while it is a little serious, it has exposed how delicate is our healthcare system, and at the same time the affordability of the, not everybody is able to afford the healthcare in US. So what is your view on our current healthcare system? How can we help increase the affordability of the healthcare to everybody in the country? So if you look at the other side, I mean, your Green Party and the Bernie Sanders movement, where they say a single pay healthcare system would be better for the country. And if you go to the libertarians, they say go to the make it a free market insurance so that people costs will go down. So there are two different things. I mean, and there are multiple Republicans has one idea and the Democrats has another idea. So what do you, if you get elected to the Congress, so what do you think will you propose to help the situation and help the reduce the cost of the healthcare, which is right now more visible, and it was there before COVID-19 too. It's not that just COVID-19 has created this. This particular thing has been there before COVID-19 too. So what are your views and what are your plans, thoughts on this, please?
Well, you have to separate the two. Our healthcare system and technology of healthcare, medications and so forth, are second to none. We have the greatest healthcare system and delivery system there. Now you dive into the major problem of the cost. Now, the Affordable Care Act did not address the cost. What it did is it gave it over completely to the insurance companies. The insurance companies have been the major problem. But you take even the insurance company out of it, and now you look at the manufacturing of our medications. Back in the Obama administration, they allowed China to completely take over the manufacturing of all generic drugs. They control 86% of all the active ingredients of all generic drugs manufactured throughout the world. Even in India and in Pakistan, they've identified it as being a national security issue. COVID-19 has brought that out to the complete forefront. America does not produce any penicillin, doesn't even produce vitamins anymore, because the world market has dictated that the cheapest place to get it in manufacturing has been China. Now, if you really want to read a book that will describe the problem massively, it's called China RX by Rosemary Gibson. I had her on my show, and she laid it out. But that book is the greatest book to read. And this is the major problem that we have, because you have the pharmaceutical companies, you have the hospitals and the doctors. They want to drive costs down because the insurance companies are driving the cost up. So we need to take medication out of the commodities market, put it into a national securities, and manufacture it back here at home, because we have no quality control over in China, because it costs us $58,000 for an inspector to go over there from the FDA. Even in Europe, it costs $45,000 for each inspection. But in Europe, we do have complete access. In China, we don't. They found rocket fuel, actually, in the medications of heart patients for the high blood pressures of senior citizens. The antidote for the anthrax is manufactured only in China. It's not manufactured here in the United States. So if we had a major anthrax attack, we don't even have the antidote in America. Our military buys all of its medications from China. Think about that. China is not our friend. China is an adversary. We do business with them, but they're not a friend. They're only one of the five. There's two in the Security Council in the UN. And Russia and China are the only ones who consistently vote against us, because they're not friends of the United States. So we have to understand that. They're not friends of the United States. They're adversaries of the United States. We can do and conduct business with them, but we have to be tough, we have to be stringent, and we have to understand who we're dealing with. So the manufacturing takeover of all medication from China and the control of all the active ingredients in China was a major national security flaw in the US. So I want to bring all of that back to the United States. But we have to deal with it based on cost. And this is the problem with the healthcare system now, is we're not addressing the base cost of the delivery of healthcare. You know, to give you an idea, when my wife was born, my mother-in-law was pregnant, she negotiated a deal for the birthing of my wife with 2 Afghan dogs. Now, can you imagine doing that today? You couldn't do that today. The only thing that a doctor can take is an insurance plan. The ACA tried to make it illegal for you to even pay cash to go see a doctor. And it's like, wait a minute, you have completely taken that relationship out from the patient to doctor. You've removed it, and now it's a patient, insurance company, doctor to insurance company, and an insurance company is now dictating every procedure that you get, every medication you get, the cost, whether or not it's effective to you. And this is the problem. We need to remove the insurance companies from in between the doctor-patient relationship. But we have to address the cost of medication. We have to address the cost of the manufacturing of our medical supplies. We have to address the cost of all of these things that are driving the cost up. The insurance company, yes, is one of them. I remember Ted Kennedy pounding his fist on the Senate podium saying this is what is it? This is the worst day when we can't stand up to the insurance companies. And that's true. We have to stand up to the insurance companies. We have to put them back into their place and stop the driving of the cost of the insurance of healthcare.
Got you. But so hopefully, I mean, the Congress and the Senate and the President one day will come to an understanding, and then they drive down the cost of the healthcare in this country, which has been the burning issue for almost, I mean, more than few decades, I would say. So
50 years at least.
At least, yes. And let's hope for that. I mean, the best. And moving on to the same, the side effects or the things which got exposed by the COVID-19 is another topic, which is the economy is struggling right now. I'm sure. I mean, because just before the COVID-19, economy was doing very good. I mean,
Yes.
and COVID-19 has created we have to stop everything. So especially the small businesses are struggling. And you also mentioned at the beginning you're an actor and you have access to them, and you've been working in the film industry or movie industry or media industry. So I'm sure many no production is happening right now because of the social distancing and other things. So I'm sure their lives are also being impacted with this pandemic. So how is that? I mean, we should, as a Congress, Congress or government should help the small businesses. I know they did came out with a package. Is that enough? Or is anything else which we need to do, or what is that we should, as a small business, we should do ourselves as a private citizens or business owners?
Well, there's been a full-on assault into the small business. I say it's just a full-on assault of the middle class. And we've seen this for decades going on because the middle class is more friendly to the Republican Party versus the Democrat Party. And the small businesses make up of over 55% of the economy and the employment. This has been going on even before the COVID-19, that full-on assault, especially here in California. When the COVID-19 came out, we began to realize how fragile the economy was based on supply chains. Now, we've relied on the China supply chain now for over a decade, for about 2 decades now. Prior to that, it was Taiwan, it was Japan, it was everybody else. China made a full-on decision to become the world's dominant economy, and they've worked at it very stringently for the last 3-4 decades. They want to be that by 2045. In 2013, they created the Belt and Road Initiative, which was to completely take over all the distribution models because they had the manufacturing down. The small businesses in the middle class in America didn't realize what Congress was doing by giving away. China didn't take our jobs from us. We gave them away because we did not want to control the cost of manufacturing in the United States. So we basically said, okay, you're in the World Trade Organization. We're going to go ahead and ship all the manufacturing to you. We're going to rely on you to be an honest player. And they haven't been an honest player. The COVID-19 came about at a very interesting point in time when President Trump was dealing with China and dealing with the trade imbalances, because it's not just China. We have a trade imbalance of $54 billion, even with Mexico. If we did it right, we would make manufacturing and trading partners completely with Mexico, Central America, and South America, and leave China out of the mix. And I've spoken with Gordon Chang on several occasions. We need to pull everything back out. And it dives into a multitude of other things that are happening because you look into the environment, and we'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But it has exposed the vulnerability of America in the manufacturing of our products and how reliant we are on it. And the middle class, the small businesses, are reliant on the supply chains, and they didn't even know it. So the COVID-19 has exposed this to everybody, that vulnerability. It wasn't the shutting down of the economy. It was actually China going, you know what, we're going to pull back. We're going to stop manufacturing. We're going to stop shipping. They even threatened to stop shipping the medical supplies. They threatened to stop shipping medicines to America. They have America on a national security stronghold that nobody understood until now. And this is what I want to change when I'm in Congress. I will lead the charge to doing this.
Gotcha. I mean, the economy to which we are, the situation of the small business and the middle class, it's going to the is related to the manufacturing jobs moving to the China mostly, which is, I understand from this point of view. I mean, if you look at but one side the economy was booming in US and middle class was shrinking. So when what's happening was, I mean, the gap of the income levels were widening a lot. I mean, the gap is widening.
Yes.
So with that, I mean, the afford everything was not. Everybody was not able to afford whatever they used to get. I mean, get them or buy them few years back. I mean, with the same income levels. Today, I mean, with this kind of situation, if you look at the youth and also the middle class people, they're all looking for some kind of social safety net. Can be welfare schemes, let it be the social security or health care and free college, those kind of things. So that's the reason, I mean, the Green Party is picking up a lot of momentum, and then also the Bernie Sanders picked up a lot of momentum in this elections, but unfortunately, or whatever it is, I mean, he has to it went a different direction. But so what do you think? I mean, is that movement, is it the right one? Is it genuine? I mean, so in this scenario, it looks like it is valid and it is the rightful thing for them to think in those lines. Don't you think so?
They're being misdirected by a false narrative being given by MSNBC and CNN and the Democrat leadership. The greatest social security net that you can have is a strong economy, strong manufacturing base. That's the greatest social security net that you can have, is being able to graduate high school with a good education, be able to walk into a manufacturing plant somewhere, get a job, be there for 5 years, move up into management, prove your worth as an employee, and move up in the company. What you're watching right now is a hopelessness in the eyes of the millennials, anywhere from 18 to 30 years old, because there aren't jobs out there. As you're stating, the middle class has been shrinking. What is the middle class? These are individuals who go to work for a company. They say, I can do this. They start their own company. They hire 5 people, 10 people. They move up to 20 people, 30 people. By the time that person hits 60 years old, they might have 600 people working for them. That is the greatest social security net that you can think of building and supporting, is building that atmosphere of business to be able to thrive. What we've been doing is the opposite. Look what happened in COVID-19. They shut down all the small businesses. What businesses stayed open? The big lot companies, the ones that are bringing in all the shipments from China, all the shipments from other companies. You can go there to Home Depot, to Lowe's, to Kmart, to Costco. You could still buy all your necessary things, but these things weren't even being manufactured in the United States. So what we were doing is shipping all of our wealth to another country still. Even though we were having the shutdown, we still need products. If we're not manufacturing them in the United States, all we're doing is shipping our wealth to another country. This has got to stop. But they have a legitimate complaint. I understand it. I see it. And it's being fanned by the Democrat leadership. It's called classism. And classism is the biggest problem going on. It's not racism, it's classism. Because if you want to look at racism, think about the last administration we had. We had a black president, we had a black attorney general, we had a black UN representatives. The black community owns and controls a tremendous amount of wealth in the Fortune 500. You know, unbelievable opportunities for the black people, because you can't point to what white people are holding them down. But yet you hear Charlie Rangel and you hear the rest of them. White people have the boot on the neck of the black community. That's not true. What's really true, and you watch this in all ethnicities across the board who are protesting, of whites, blacks, Asians, you know, Indians, you look at all of them and they're all complaining about the same thing, and that's the lack of opportunity. There's a complete frustration in their eyes. There's a hopelessness. What can I do to make a living? And the policies that are being passed by the Democrat leadership are driving the cost of living sky high. You look at it in California, in San Francisco, you have to bring home $160,000 a year in order to have a 2-bedroom apartment, to have one child and a wife or a husband. In the city of Los Angeles, you have to bring home $154,000 to be happy in the city of Los Angeles. Name one child that graduates high school that's going to find a job bringing home $160,000 or $154,000. That would create a hopelessness in anybody. And by the time they get to 25 years old, they still can't figure it out. By the time they get to 30 years old, they still can't figure it out. Then you look at education, and it's the same thing. 48% of the college graduates are not working in the field of their degrees, and they're working at minimum wage. So there's a frustration. I understand it. I've gone to Bernie Sanders, a couple of his rallies, and I listened to what he has to say. I've watched the audience more, and I see that hopelessness in their eyes. I see that frustration in their eyes. But the way Bernie Sanders wants to fix it, and a lot of the progressive Democrats want to fix it, we're going to take the money from the people who work hard, and we're going to give it to the people who are frustrated and can't work. They're not even being given the opportunity to work. So this is what's got to change. So the greatest security net that you're talking about is bringing the manufacturing back to the United States, creating the atmosphere for the middle class to thrive, giving the opportunities for people to say, hey, I want to start my own business. Let me start it up. Let me do it. Let me employ a few people. That's the greatest social security net that we can build.
Gotcha. Thank you. See, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, the governments in the California or at the federal level, the things have been same both in the Republican government or even the Democratic government. I mean, I don't know. I don't see who to blame here. But I mean, yes. But at the end of the day, I mean, both the things have not been different from both in both governments. That brings us to another point. I mean, you said, I mean, and which is also one of the campaign policies which you are campaigning on, which is like homelessness. This particular income inequality, and especially in California, as you mentioned rightly, I mean, the costs are very high. Cost of living is high, and the taxes are high. And the housing especially is very expensive in the Bay Area and also the LA area. So with this one, we have these two places, San Francisco and the LA, you have many homeless people. That's one side. I mean, we have a issue to fix, but on your campaign, I've been reading that you've been talking about there are some abuse or not abuse, I would say, I mean, not handling this issue properly. They're spending money, but they are not handling it properly. I would like to hear more from you on the homelessness issue and how they are fixing and how you want to fix it.
Well, I'll address the first part that you brought out, and that's both the Republican and the Democrat. It's not really looking for blame. It's just understanding the failures of policies being presented by both sides of the aisle, by the Republicans and the Democrats. I want to, how would you say, fashion myself as more of a person looking for the root cause of the problem. Let's identify the problem first. Really identify the problem. Look at the different possible root causes of the problem, find the different solutions to the problem, and then implement the best equitable solution to the problem. Ronald Reagan said it very perfectly. We need to stop looking for the Republican solution or the Democrat solution. We need to find the right solution to the right problem and implement it. This is the problem we have. We're too concentrated on Republican and Democrat. It's not about left or right. It's not about up or down. It's about right and wrong. Which way do we want to go? Now, when you look at the homeless problem, it's a very simple problem. It's a mental health care issue. The mental health care issue is individuals who are not being taken care of, as I stated before, going all the way back to high school. The psychiatric community has identified that 1 out of every 5 people have some form of mental health problem. To what degree is it? Well, if it starts off small like an ant and you don't address it, it becomes a dinosaur after a while, and it needs to be taken care of. And this is the biggest problems. This is the biggest problems in America right now, is they're not identifying the root causes of the problem. And we need to address it. So the homeless problem is mental health, it's drug addiction, and we've got to address it. Close the window.
Yeah, got you. Thank you. And at the same time, I mean, you mentioned that, I mean, the way they are fixing it, I mean, they're spending money, and the money the government is giving it to the construction companies to build the construction, and also
I got a little sidetracked there because something was going on out. It's what happens when we do interviews by Skype. You know, the dog was barking.
Right. No issues.
The gardener in my property just showed up, so he's weeding out front. So, anyways, yes, the money that's being spent is a big circular problem. This was identified in New York. It was identified in San Francisco. It's being identified in Los Angeles, in Oregon, and Washington State, to where billions of dollars, the taxpayers want it fixed. So the taxpayers will agree, and they pass a tax to give the government the opportunity to fix the problem. So they spend it. To give you a short synopsis real fast, I went to a meeting where there was a construction company that was proposing the building of a transitional home in Topanga, on Topanga Canyon in the Chatsworth area. They're being given expedited permit processes. They don't have to do the environmental impact reports. They don't have to address the zoning problems in that particular area. They just get to build the units. These units are 800 square feet. They're costing the taxpayer $750,000 per unit. There's 50 units there. I can build 3,000 square foot homes for $750,000. I'm a builder. I build houses. I can build 2 homes for $750,000 and house 30 people in these houses. This is a one little apartment of 800 square feet. Doesn't have a kitchen. It's got a little kitchenette in it. So you think about that, you say, okay, wait a minute. The building costs don't change for that builder as it does for a private builder. There's the same building costs. In fact, they have to spend a little less because they don't have to do the environmental impact reports. They don't have to abide by the zoning commissions. They don't have to stand in line and pay the exorbitant fees for the permit processes. Even the inspection processes are changed to a degree. They don't have to have the same parking requirements as other builders have to have. The builder retains 1/9 of 1% of the ownership of the building because now they're being given a no competitive bid contract for the remodeling of the building every 10 years. The same construction company now owns the management company that manages the building. This taxpayer giving for the Section 8 housing, you know, the vouchers for the housing, they get those vouchers. So now you have clients that are not really paying for it. They don't have to work. They're getting a voucher from the government. That voucher goes right back to the builder via so you're looking at the circulation of money going through just the businesses. Now these same builders are giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to the incumbents in order for them to be reelected. This is that circular process. Now, are they giving in these transitional houses the mental health, the foundational tools that they need to survive? No. There are buildings inside North Hollywood in my district where prostitution, drugs, violence, car dismantlings are going on at these buildings. So the criminal activity is still thriving in these buildings, and they're not stopping it. It's just a money laundering scheme as far as I'm concerned. We need to get serious about addressing the problem. The biggest problem right now is we have a bunch of crooks in office. They're taking billions of dollars from the taxpayer, and they're not addressing the problem. What we have now is complete lawlessness. Give you one idea, the Los Angeles Police Department made an arrest in a homeless encampment over in my district. Okay, they arrested 7 people. They found $30,000 in counterfeit $100 bills. Counterfeit 100. Are you trying to tell me that the homeless people have a printing press? Right? They found AK-47s, they found handguns, they found an array of methamphetamines and cocaine. The people that are pushing drugs now are using the homeless people to peddle the drugs, to pass $100 bills as change for the drug exchanges that they're doing. And it needs to stop. Law and order has to become a precedent to be able to stop these things, be able to identify the root causes of the problems and address them for all of society, because it's inhumane to leave these people on the streets. But I look at it as even more inhumane the way in which our current leadership is dealing with it. And it's got to stop. And the federal level, there's a lot that can be done on the federal level. There's a lot that can be done by the representative in the district. But our representative, my opponent, is sitting there standing on his hands in Washington, D.C. and ignoring his complete district.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, it's a new view, new perspective on the homelessness and also how it works. I mean, how the money is flowing and working. And if you look at the politics, I mean, in the US, looks like even city council elections also, you have builders involved, I mean, in a different way. I mean, we see that now I see the construction companies and the builders are getting involved at the state level and the national level politics too, which is a little different angle. So I will leave that one to the audience and moving on to another topic.
Okay.
See, I mean, as you said, I mean, the guns and in the homelessness people and the drugs and all those things. I mean, in the US, another important topic is and also for the Republican Party and the Libertarian Party, the Second Amendment, which is important, and everybody loves it, everybody likes it, to have the freedom to own a gun. But at the same time, we have issues in our society, the gun violence. I mean, let it be the schools or the theaters or the colleges or universities and gatherings. So how do you balance between your freedom and the safety here?
You can never legislate evil out of society. Evil is always going to exist in society. And as I was pointing out with the mental health issues in the school systems, we do not address those problems from the beginning. And unfortunately, because we don't address them, these kids become more and more isolated. They're at home playing these video games that are like real life, war, battle of rape, car thefts, murders, killings. So then they psychologically break. They go to school and they kill fellow students. This is a tragedy, but it's evil. It's absolute evil. This is when I say that, to look at the root causes of the problem. Do we really have a gun violence issue? There's approximately 34,000 deaths by guns in America basically every year. Over a third of those are suicide. 1/3 of them are murders, just straight out murders. Another one is in gang violence. And you look in Chicago, they have the strictest gun laws in Chicago, but yet every weekend you'll have over 105 people shot every single weekend. Look at the narrative of our police departments right now. Last year there was over 10 million arrests. There was 1,004 use of force that led to a death. Only 44 of those deaths, use of force deaths, the victims basically were unarmed. 9 of them were black, 19 of them were white. But yet we have all this rioting and looting and burning and killing of cops. Now, 89 cops were killed that same year. 89 police officers were killed that same year. You don't hear about that. The narrative you hear is the police departments are all lawless, they're murderers, they're out of control. That's the same thing that's going on with the Second Amendment. In California, with the COVID-19 and the shutting down, the rioting, the looting, you know who's buying the most guns right now? It's been proven. The people who are buying the most guns right now are the liberals who never owned a gun, because they understand they are the first responder in their home. If somebody's breaking into your home, somebody's breaking into your business, are you going to tell that perpetrator, hold on a minute, I'm calling the cops. He's going to be here in 10 minutes. He's going to be here in a half hour with a gun. You can deal with him because I don't want to deal with you. No, you're the first responder. The Second Amendment, the big portion of the Second Amendment is the individual right to own a weapon for self-protection that shall not be infringed. You are the first responder to protect yourself. Someone's breaking into your home, and someone wanted to break into your home and they wanted to kill your wife, molest your children. Are you going to stand there and watch it, or do you want to pick up a gun, or do you want to pick up a cell phone? I want to pick up a gun. The Second Amendment gives me that right to make that decision of whether I want to own that gun or not own that gun. The Second Amendment is the most important amendment, second to the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of redress, and the freedom to protest, to gather. The Second Amendment protects those freedoms, and it protects every single one of them after that. Right now, we're seeing it as the most predominant, issue in America of self-protection, our right to self-protect. And especially with the left and the Democrat leadership now wanting to abolish police departments, wanting to get rid of our Second Amendment, all the criminals are going to have the guns. All the people who want to do harm to you. Look at history. Look at Venezuela, even, just the recent. As soon as they disarmed the people, the government took over and the people had no rights at that point. Look, after World War II, how many countries disarmed, slaughtered all the opposition to their political regimes. The Second Amendment is extremely important because you, as a sovereign individual, a free individual in America, have a God-given right, an inalienable right to protect your life, your liberty, and your pursuit of happiness. That right cannot be taken away by anybody.
We heard your views on this particular topic, you brought in the police, the way the police people are being treated, and also police are being handling the way other people. No doubt, every department and every society and every community has good and bad, and there are few bad people who will be bringing black marks to everybody. No doubt. Again, I've been telling this one in the previous shows too. Police. There are many police people who help the community, who help the people, who help the kids and everybody. So they have been very nice and helpful in the society. No doubt about it. But there are some instances where things have gone wrong, and it is the one which is creating the issue in the community right now. So during this time, so the movement like defunding and the repealing the what is that? You are the immunity, the qualified immunity, repealing qualified immunity for the police department. So it's going on. So what are your views on these two?
Well, the simple answer to the qualified immunity is that it has to be addressed no different than a homicide. There has to be levels of identifying the how would you say, the assault on the constitutional right of an individual. And if it's a blatant, outright assault on the constitutional rights of an individual, then I say, okay, at that moment, you can go ahead and civilly sue that policeman. If you open it up completely and say qualified immunity is taken away, you will not get one person in society to stand up to be a law enforcement officer because he's going to be sued for everything. He'll be sued for sneezing. This is ridiculous. But I do agree that you should have some kind of a recourse, just like in the George Floyd. Those 4 cops murdered George Floyd. It's obvious. To me, it's extremely obvious. He was compliant. There was no reason for 3 police officers to be standing on him. You know, 1 with his knee on his neck, 2 with the second one with 2 knees on his back, the third one holding his legs down. That was just outright murder by a police department. Not by the police department, by those 3 police officers, and then the 1 police officer standing off to the side and not stopping it. That was just insane. Those 4 officers should be sued for everything they own. I agree with that. But you get into the other complicated cases of use of force, just like I specified before with the 10 million arrests, 1,004 use of forces that led to the death of the perpetrator. Only 44 of those cases, the perpetrator didn't have a gun. 9 of them were black, 19 of them were white. If you take away the qualified immunity, every single person could throw up a lawsuit. You will not get somebody to stand up as a police officer. Now, my family has been police officers going back to my great-grandfather. I have a lot of family members that are policemen and police women. My cousins are detectives. A lot of them are in the fire department. They go out and they do things the average person will not do. They see things the average person will never see. Our police department, what most people encounter is the cop on the beat. They don't see the anti-terrorism units. They don't see the investigators and the detectives doing the detective work, looking into a murder, looking into child molestation, child rape, child abductions. You know, they don't look at the domestic violence that goes on. They do not see all of the work that the police departments do to help protect the society and keep law and order intact. All they see is the cops on the beat. And unfortunately, as you eloquently pointed out, there are a few cops that are no good. Now, the proposal by the Democrat leadership is taking control, bringing once again the power back to a centralized power in Washington, D.C. That's taking away the 10th Amendment. The states have the right to regulate their police departments. The counties have the right to regulate their police departments, and the cities have the right to regulate their police departments. Can we create a blanket training manual? Yeah, I agree with that. Can we create a blanket reporting? Yes, I agree to that. But again, look at the root causes. Why does a police department, even a sheriff's department, why do they not fire a cop that's gone bad? They don't fire that cop because of the millions of dollars they have in training. If the federal government really wanted to stand up and create some kind of a program to help get rid of bad cops, then you create a grant program with the small cities, the small incorporates, even the county sheriff's department says, you know what, we hired this guy. He looked great on paper. He did great on the psych evals. He did great in training. He became a police officer. Within the first 3 years, he's got 10 abuse of force allegations against him. We have found that he's not a good cop. We got to let him go. They apply for a grant to train a new cop to replace him. That's how you can get rid of bad cops. It becomes a monetary thing, not a moral issue. It's a monetary issue. The cities do not have the money. The city of Los Angeles right now, if you look at their police force, there are 9,891 cops, sworn in police officers. You look at the city of New York, they have 36,000 sworn police officers. Population is about the same. Why does the city of Los Angeles have even less crime than the city of New York? They have way more cops. They have way more sworn officers than the city of Los Angeles. It's only an element. The police department is only an element of the community. If the community is rotten, then you have to have more police. If the community is good and wants to watch after each other, then the police department can be extremely small like we have in Los Angeles. The police department is very small in LA. In comparison to everywhere else, it's a very small police department. We're a good community, but this community is now going rogue because the narrative that should be talked about, and it's not being talked about. What is the public's responsibility in their engagement with the police officer? Are they supposed to, when a police officer pulls them over, are they supposed to start screaming and yelling at the cop? Are they supposed to start telling this cop off and saying, you have no right to pull me over, you're racially profiling me? And the cop's just like, well, wait a minute. You were doing 90 miles an hour down a 35 mile an hour residential street. That's why I pulled you over. I don't care what color you are. I don't care who you are. You broke the law, I'm pulling you over. Why am I a little distant from you? Just YouTube, how many cops get shot right in the face when they walk up to a car? Put yourself in that position. The public has to put themselves in the position of a police officer at 2 o'clock in the morning after the bars close. They pull somebody over on a dark street. They don't know this person. There's no witnesses around. This guy is swerving all over the road. They don't even know who's in the car. They don't know if the car is stolen. They don't know anything. All they know is this guy is swerving around the road. He is a danger to society, a danger to himself. He comes walking up to the car. This guy starts aggressively, verbally abusing him. What do you expect from the police officer? What do you expect him to do? This is why I say the national conversation has to be shifted over to what is the responsibility of the general public in their encounters with the police department. My attitude is very simple. Respect them. Respect the job that they do. You have an opportunity in the courtroom. If you don't think your ticket was being given to you proper, you can go in there, plead not guilty. You don't even have to pay bail. You can confront the police officer and say, officer, I wasn't doing this. I was doing this. Da, 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 da. The judge will make a decision. That's your opportunity to contest what the police officer has done. But if you're going to sit there and look at this police officer and tell him off and get into a verbal confrontation with him, what do you expect? What do you expect the outcome to be? Just because the person has a badge doesn't mean you get to abuse him. It means that you should respect him. He's there for your protection. He's there to serve you. And you have the opportunity to contest what he does in a courtroom.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mark Reed, for your views on all these topics. Do you have any message to the audience and the listeners or the constituents, please?
I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to your audience. It's been a wonderful conversation. We've touched many topics, but society has to start taking on their personal responsibilities of who they vote for. I look at all politicians. I don't blame the politician. I think politicians are cut from a certain fabric, and if whether they are a liar, they're a criminal, they're a thief, they're cut from that fabric. It is the responsibility of the voter. You need to identify the person who best fits and represents your values when you go to the polling booth. If the person that's in office is part and parcel to the problems that you're facing in your community, give somebody else a try. Stop looking at parties. Stop walking into the polling booth as a Republican or a Democrat or a Greenpeace or a Libertarian and say, I'm just going to vote for them because of because they're that party. Do your due diligence. Look the person up. Try to reach out to that person and contact them. You can contact me from my website. Even my cell phone is on my website. You can directly and personally communicate with me, and I will discuss any issue with you, because that is the responsibility of a person running for office. But the person voting has a responsibility as well. Rather than going to a tea party and complain every month, rather than complaining to your friends every month, do your own due diligence. Look the person up. See if they represent your values. Not your party, your values. If that person aligns to your values, vote for them. Otherwise, don't complain with what you get. If you look at the state of California, it's been run by progressive Democrats for over 3 decades, about 4 decades now. You have the largest income separation. You have the largest wealth separation. We have 1/10 of the population of the United States. We have 48% of the welfare recipients in the state of California. You look at the way it's being run. You look at the assaults on the middle class. You look at the criminal activity and the lawlessness in the streets. You look at the drive to defund the police departments. You look at the desperation and the hopelessness in the eyes of the millennials out there. And who can you look at and say created it? The people in charge. That's it. Who's in charge in the state of California? It's the Progressive Democrats. It's the Progressive Democrats even in the city of Los Angeles. The corruption. You look at all of it and you have a responsibility to say, you know what? What do I have to lose? I'm going to vote for somebody different. I'm going to vote for the other party. But don't just vote party. Look the person up. Identify with that person. Look at their value system. Look where they're coming from. Do they identify with you? Do they understand what it's like to walk into a supermarket and buy a gallon of milk and a carton of eggs? Do they understand what it's like to bring your children to school and worry about your children's safety and security and what kind of education they're getting? Do they have a small business? Do they understand you? That's the person you want to vote for. I hope that I'm that kind of person for you. I have signed both sides of a check. I've run businesses. I've been married since I was 21 years old. I have a 43-year marriage now with my childhood sweetheart. I have 11 grandchildren. Of my 11 grandchildren, 10 of them are granddaughters. I worry about my granddaughter's future, but not just their economic future, because the way society is going, I'm worried about their physical future, because we have such lawlessness and anarchy going on now that their lives are in danger. And we need to get back to a society that works together, understands one another, and looks for the common interest and goals of each other and supports that. I hope that I can earn your vote and your support in this upcoming election on November 3rd.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mark Reed, for coming onto the show and sharing your views. Wish you all the best in the elections for you. Have a nice rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.